So welcome back to the woods for a chat or blog on a log. Don't say that the wrong way around, it could go really wrong. Anyway, I thought I would just share some thoughts that were coming up for me in the last couple of weeks with you and take a trip out to get some organic eggs from the local egg farm. And believe it or not, as random as these subjects sound, they do actually fit together in some strange way. So without further ado, let's go to the egg farm. Greetings. Do not adjust your search. This is actually June in England, and yep, the woolly jumpers are out. If you're in Ireland right now, sincere condolences. I know you understand exactly what's going on. So today I'm just taking a moment out to head down the road to the local organic egg farm. I thought I'd just take you with me so that you can have a look at some alternatives to going to the supermarket for buying your produce. And it's often tucked away in little places like this little farm where you find some really delightful alternatives. So I've got my basket, I've got my tray. Let's go. So I've arrived now at the egg shack, which is at Grassington Farm, and I don't know if you can see behind me here, but all the very, very happy free-range hens live in the farm behind me, and they have a lovely little hut here where you can go and buy your eggs directly. So let's go and have a look around. So this is the inside of the shack where all the beautiful organic eggs are, and look at this, it's so cute. It's little messages of thanks from everybody who got their eggs here, and you can bring back your tray, which is what I'm doing, and you can pay by cash the old-fashioned way, or you can actually leave a little payment slip and they'll send you a link. So I didn't have my change on me today, so I'm actually going to fill in one of these forms, get a little payment link, and I'm going to compile a full tray of organic eggs, which for £12 a tray, for a whole tray, is absolutely amazing value, and you know exactly where they've come from. Also adorably in here they have a book swap, so you can bring in your books to swap at the same time. How lovely, lovely, lovely is that? And yeah, just a lovely experience. Had a little walk up there to see the chickens, and so that I could try and show you, but it's so adorable. They have a huge amount of land to roam around on, and there was a few rebel chickens sort of wandering off, but most of them are sort of nesting together, and it really reminds me of when I was a little girl, and I grew up on an estate in East Sussex called Firle, and my mum actually worked on the then free-range egg farm, and I don't know, it's just got something of childhood about it, with them roaming around in the stinger nettles and just having all the grasses and the meadows and all the different seeds and plants to roll around in, you know, not just green grass, but all the meadow flowers as well. And they just seem really curious and just really happy. And what's so lovely is just knowing that they are laying eggs and nothing else. It's just about the eggs. So that's very comforting as well. So I hope you enjoyed. that little trip to Grassington Egg Farm. And if you're in East Sussex or West Sussex, I highly recommend a trip out here. It's just one of those last vestiges of trust that we used to have, where you trust people to pay, you trust people to put the money in, and I think it's just, yeah, very, very special. And it reminds me of the west of Ireland, which I miss very, very much. So this is like my little slice of the west of Ireland, but in the east of England. So a couple of weeks ago, I went to a conference which was called New Age to Jesus, and it's for people like me who came out of an alternative lifestyle and became Christians. Now, if you've been following me here for some time, you'll know that my life changed quite dramatically, and in no small way was that due to my faith change. And as much as I cringe sort of at the term New Age, in some ways it just doesn't encompass everything. It's not a case of collecting crystals and wafting incense, and sometimes that's kind of what people think about it. It's such a multi-layered esoteric world, and my life was entrenched in that for a good 30 years, and so was my work. But something came up that I thought was really, really, really interesting, and it's a question that's been posed to me sometimes on my journey of the last 3 years, and it's an observation that I've made as well. So I thought I'm just going to share some of my thoughts about it here, just my opinion and my experience. So I'm not saying it's universal, just something that, I wanted to share with you. So at this conference, which was really, really interesting actually, and really enriching, there was a young woman there whose experience I highly related to. Like me, she'd gone down an enormous rabbit hole of healing and esoteric wisdom and new age wisdom, if you like, new thought, and had gone through what I call the non-duality sort of wormhole, where there is no self, there is no identity, where effectively your identity is constructed and everything about the self is kind of nothing and everything at all. And I went through this, and as embarrassing as it kind of is to say now, I truly believed I'd had a high awakening experience at the time, and that I'd awakened completely to my true nature and to reality. And the reason I'm sharing this with you first is because one of the biggest misunderstandings that I get from people about becoming a Christian after living in that world is that you must have become a Christian because you were scared of shadow work, that you just didn't go deep enough, that you encountered something frightening, and the minute you encountered that frightening thing, you grabbed onto religion or some sort of sky daddy figure in order to feel safe. And I just wanted to share my experience in case it's useful to anyone, that was the complete polar opposite to me. So let's first think about shadow work and where that actually comes from. So shadow work essentially is Jungian, so therefore it's not actually that old in the way we see it now. I mean, a lot of things actually are really heavily based in Carl Jung's philosophies, but they've been so absorbed into our lives now that we never really question it anymore. But it shows you how quick things can become normal or normalized in culture in general. But we could look at shadow work by another name, and we could look at it as something that shamanic practitioners and ancient civilizations were interested in. And I was super interested in it. I certainly wasn't afraid of it. And I would say that I took it probably to a degree that I definitely would not advise trying at all. But before I go into that, I just want to say something that I've observed now in my new perspective, which is essentially just throw spirituality out of the door just for a moment. Suspend spirituality and let's just be logical. If something moves like a snake and speaks like a snake, it probably is a snake. That's number one. I just want to put that there. And the second thing, if something is inherently looking dark and bad, why would you want to make friends with it? Just keep that in mind in a logical perspective before I go in the deep end here. So in my old work and my old life, and my whole career was based around my spirituality, as well as being a musician. I used to teach retreats on mindfulness, non-duality, feminine wisdom, all that kind of stuff as well. And it was definitely, what I felt was an extension of my nature religion, if you like. Not that I would have called it that at the time. And I would say that not only did I embrace my demons, but I practically just got them to set up their life. In my life, I didn't believe in sort of borders of wrong and right. I was a big fan of Rumi's poetry and that line, out there is a field beyond wrongdoing and right doing, and I will meet you there. And it was very romantic, this non-dualistic idea that there is actually no inherent evil. There is shades of dark and light, and we are made of all of them. And all of these parts of us that are dark just need to be loved back to life and need to be accepted and integrated into our life. Now, sorry, I think I just got bombed by a squirrel. You're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome to join in. So I think in my own experience, I saw some incredibly dark things, and I will not go into that today, but I lived through experiences that were pretty traumatizing in the spiritual world, that were actually really dangerous, but I did not perceive them that way at all at the time. Now, I never in my old life would have used the word demonic, and I would have just got so triggered if you'd said that to me. So if you've just got triggered right now, I understand. It took me a long time to accept that even evil existed. I really believed that it was about levels of consciousness, and that it was about lower vibrations and higher vibrations, and reaching a certain level of almost spiritual education, experience, or understanding. And I also believed that it was important to integrate your shadow, because by doing so, you were somehow going to be healed from it. But essentially, in my own experience, although I was doing all the right things and believed I was doing all the right things, my own life was morally falling apart from the inside. And I always say this to people, you wouldn't have necessarily pointed the finger at me and said that, but I knew what was going on, and the fruits of my life were continuing to show up in those same cycles of destruction. And I had done so many things about it, and I wasn't afraid. In fact, I was very excited in a way to challenge darkness, to experience it even, and to see what the actual, sorry, that's a woodpecker. Oh, it's a spotted woodpecker. Sorry, I've got bird ADHD. I do apologize. So a lot of these things would not be threatening to me, although they were very frightening at times. It wasn't running away from those things that made me change my belief system. It was a radical encounter of the living God, and nothing else really could have done it. I couldn't have intellectualized my way into it. I couldn't have spiritualized my way into it. And I guess what I wanted to share is that there's this misnomer that once your faith is in Jesus and you're walking with Jesus, as hopefully if you're a Christian, you should be doing that you have somehow just, you're scared, everything's coming from fear. There is a very, very, very big difference between how you deal with so-called shadow work. One is that God enters into those places. He already knows those places, and he also knows that those places need healing. And instead of you working through your shadow, he took your shadows on the cross. He does the heavy lifting. He took all that darkness on the cross. And though you will have to walk through healing, and you will have to walk through your wounds with him, it is a completely different experience. And it means understanding that we all have darkness. It means actually coming face to face with that darkness and completely admitting and acknowledging it. And that's a totally different thing to shadow work and getting spooked out by shadow work. I feel calmer and much more at peace with that now in my life than I ever would have in anything that I might have tried to do of my own will, of my own intellect, of my own strength before. I really wanted to share that because I think that that is such an interesting paradox that I've experienced, and I could hear it when I was at this conference as well, that you're not running away from your shadows, you're not running away from the darkness. In fact, you are finally admitting that there is inherent darkness and inherent sin. The trigger radar has probably gone off. I'm sure I found that word horrifically triggering. But sin just simply means to be without, and it means living without God. And that means living of our own will. Something else I want to say about it is everything that can be bad can be repurposed in some way for good. And so in my old life of shadow work, the transmutation of that shadow or the transformation of that shadow that we look for and are working away at and excavating for is to transmute that in some way, or to embrace it as part of us, to make friends with our demons, to make friends with our darkness. But what I would say is that that transmutation happens naturally by God's law when we walk with him, because he tells us that every weapon formed against us will be used for our good. So he doesn't wish for us to have those weapons of darkness formed against us, but he will take them and he will end up using them for your good. And that to me is a huge difference to the way I would have seen things in my old life. I would have seen things as, oh, this is a test, or I'm supposed to go through this really dark thing because it's going to be good for me, or it's da 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 da. And I don't perhaps see it the same way anymore personally. I see it as this is something that God wouldn't really want for us, but he will transform it for our good and for the good of those who love him. That's what he says in his word. So I wanted to share that. So what on earth has this got to do with buying organic eggs? I mean, it's probably pretty Roger irrelevant. So let me just sew up the segue here for you. So a lot of what I learned about shadow work as a Christian compared to my previous 30 years in different philosophies and practices is that a lot of what we experience is because of things that we come into agreement with. And a lot of doorways in our lives are opened by agreeing to things. And sometimes we don't even realize things that we are agreeing with and how that impacts and affects our lives. For instance, let's look at it on a political scale, which is we tend to vote for someone that we agree with, right? Or the person we agree with the most. And we often think that that is going to be the change that we want to see. But there is another way that we vote every single day. We vote with our time. We vote with our attention, we vote with our money, we vote with all of these things. So for me, if I go and spend my money at a local organic farm, and I am willing to go and invest my time going there because I know that they have been loved and taken care of, and there's no nasty, weird processing that I don't understand or can even read the words of is going into my food, then I'm coming into agreement with that kind of goodness. And that's so obvious. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. Will there be shadow? Absolutely. There will always be shadow. But how do we put our foothold? How do we put a stake in the ground for goodness in this world which has so many shadows in it? One of my biggest understandings about that now, which I'm increasingly learning, I'm increasingly learning it every day, is that where we put that time and attention, that's your vote, that's what you're coming into agreement with. And don't get me wrong, We have to pay bills, for instance, that we might not feel very agreeable to, right? There's legal obligations that we all have. We have to render unto Caesar what belongs to Caesar. And yeah, okay, we might not like what Caesar is doing with that money, and that grates on me a lot, and I'm sure it does on some of you as well. But where we do have autonomy and where we do have power, it's important to put that stake in the ground. Sorry, I keep getting bombed by animals. Which one is this now? So we can make a difference in that way. It's small, but it's quite important. And whatever you believe in, you might not believe in being a Christian. I didn't have this life for 45 years, so I wasn't born into this. I was born again, which is a totally different experience. And what I would say is just knowing that people make decisions because of something radical that's happened to them, and it's not always out of fear. And I think there is a really big misnomer about following Christ and having fear. It's completely the opposite. He promises us peace beyond all understanding. He doesn't promise that our lives will be peaceful beyond all understanding, but in here we will have that peace. And it certainly has been proven in my own life that peace, regardless of the chaos that one might be experiencing, and regardless of the fact that there are indeed shadows, that I can hand those shadows up to him. Anyway, I didn't mean to make this into some sort of Christian apologetics. I'm literally just sharing some thoughts on what happened to me this week. Thank you so much for joining me on this little chat in the woods. I appreciate it so much, and thank you for continuing to join me here on my channel. If you enjoy this and you'd like to hear more of things like this, then please click the subscribe button below. It would be wonderful to share more of this journey with you. And until next time, maybe there might be a little bit of footage of a nightingale hiding here somewhere, I hope. Okay, lots of love and God bless you. See you next time.